Welcome to Real Life with Jenny. My name's Jenny Senapataratna. Grab your favorite drink, get yourself a snack, and we'll get started. See my mug behind me? It's my Sri Lanka mug. Vanilla bean macaroon, one of the best black teas out there. Seriously, get yourself some. It is so yummy. You do not need cream and sugar, but it's really good with cream and sugar. And as you can tell, I have started decorating for Christmas. My daughter came home this weekend, and I'm like, she's here, we're doing this. It's not quite Thanksgiving yet, but that doesn't matter. We're now in Christmas mode, so we have our peanut brittle. I went to Trader Joe's, got myself some peanut brittle. Super excited. Cannot wait. So let's get real. I'm going to give you a foreshadowing in case you want to turn this off. I'm going to talk about cemeteries today. I normally do my whole story, but I do not want anybody to be surprised. It's not going to be scary, but I just wanted to make sure that if this is a trigger for you, please do not listen to this one. All right. So I grew up in a house where we spent a lot of time at the cemetery because it was a place of celebration. It was not somewhere that was scary. It was not somewhere that you didn't we spent a lot of time there. First of all, because my great-grandmother Rose, who I actually named my daughter after, she's Samantha Rose, because she is one of the spunkiest people I've ever met. She just blew my mind. She was creative, she was spunky, she was always outside the box. She was a single mom for most of her life because her husband died. They had 5 kids, I believe it was 5. And she was just one of those people that never stopped. She was crazy ambitious, and she just did the wildest stuff. I don't know. Anyway, that was just, I wanted my daughter to have I'm a woman, here I am. Anyway, and so she felt very strongly that people in the cemetery should have flowers. So my family moved to this small town generations ago, and they're all buried in this small little country cemetery. And so her job, she started that we needed to put flowers on everyone's cemetery. Not fake flowers, real flowers that you kept alive from May to September. You don't put them out and forget about them. You keep them alive, you prune them, you water them, you replant new ones. It is going to be beautiful. That is just the way things are. And when she passed away, even before she passed away, my grandmother took that up. And so my grandfather, I remember as a kid, he would get locked out in the cemetery. He'd put his keys in the trunk, and there was no cell phone, and he'd be out there for hours waiting for someone to drive by because he had watered all the plants and he couldn't get home, And so my grandmother would go out there and supervise and make sure everything was, my grandfather would drive the car up because she wasn't able to walk very well. And she's like, we need a bench out here. And she'd sit in the car and she'd give him instructions. That needs to be pruned better. We need to bring that one back and replant. And, she had a whole system. And my mom was an only child. So when they passed away, my mom took it over, which also meant the oldest started helping. So I have spent years, it feels like, in a cemetery. And so it's always been a place of celebration and remembrance and fun for me. That was just the way it was. I'd sit there with my grandfather and he would tell me stories about this uncle and what they did and why we're putting flowers up there and why we're taking care of it because of this story and that story and this person. And it was just always such a jovial thing. And so when I had a daughter, I knew that I wanted that to be for her too. I wanted cemeteries and funerals to be a place of celebration. Not that you don't mourn and it's not sad. Because it's always sad when you lose someone. There's a process that you have to walk through, and I'm not taking away from that. But I wanted cemeteries to be a place that she could find for celebration. In fact, when our dog died, my grandparents were already gone, and they were buried together. And behind their stone, we dug a little hole, and we put his ashes in a ball behind there because she wanted a place that she could go back to and talk to him and remember him. And so we really cultivated that in her life. So one night when she was 4 or 5, maybe 6, I don't know, it was somewhere in there. She was pretty little. My husband thought I was crazy because it was way past her bedtime. Around 11 o'clock, I took a big blanket. It was in the fall because I didn't want any bugs. I hate bugs, so I'm like, ugh. So we went out and I put a sheet out and we laid down. We put our hats and our mittens on and we laid down in the cemetery for at least a half an hour, 45 minutes, and looked up at the stars. There was no moon out that night, so the stars were just bright and wild, and there were fireflies everywhere, and there were deer. It was just one of the best memories that she even talks about it to this day, that's one of her core memories of what a cemetery is. And then when we started traveling as a family, I knew that I love to go and see the history of a cemetery. Like, it is just so interesting, the way people have taken care of things, and, there's stories and there's all kinds of stuff in there. So we'd actually go get a donut and allow her to have a donut and then just run and kind of look at things and try to find different people, because there's all kinds of people buried all over the country. And so we just made them super fun. That was just something that I was super intentional about. And so I have been praying about doing this podcast for a while, because I don't like to talk about this kind of stuff, because it can be triggering for people because they're dealing with a close death. And I'm so sorry, honestly. But I realized that I needed to talk about it, because the thing that I did with my daughter is something that I think we all need to do in our own lives. And that is be intentional about something that's important to us. Life happens, and sometimes you can veer off over here and, something happens accidentally. But really, when we're going after something, we have to be intentional. Like, we need to go after it. We need to make a plan. Things just don't happen. You don't become a millionaire by playing the lottery. Most of us, I don't play the lottery because I would lose. And I don't like to lose money. Just saying. But you don't become a millionaire because you don't work at it. You got to work. You got to make a plan. You got to be intentional about it. And so often in life, we just think, well, it'll happen, right? Like, dinner just shows up at the table. It doesn't. It does because you've worked at it and you've made a plan. And with us, as my husband and I, when we were raising our daughter, one of the things that I knew is that death comes. I knew that it happened. I know that it's ugly and it's gross and you don't plan for it. Like, you just don't. You don't plan for it. But I wanted her to have a place that she could go and know that it's a place you can celebrate. And in the Bible, it's actually kind of a biblical thing, because they set up rocks when they crossed the Jordan, right? As a celebration place. And I just think that we need to be more intentional. We need to think about the future in a way of not worrying about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we get to this place of, like, when we're talking about the future, we think and we start worrying and we start going, oh, this is all going to happen. And, and that's not what I mean. I mean, think of, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What values do I have? And how do I get there? How do I make this a little bit easier for her? When my grandparents passed away, and that was now, she's 18, so that was 16 years ago. I had friends that didn't come to the funeral, and very, very close friends, because they were scared of funerals, because it was something they weren't able to go to. It was something that they weren't able to cope with, was someone's passing away, even though they didn't know my grandparents. And unfortunately, that is part of life. And I wanted my daughter to be equipped to be able to celebrate someone once they were gone. Maybe not right away, because you got to get through that mourning process, which can be years and years and years. But I wanted her to be able to celebrate that and be able to go back and go, I remember when I was with this person, and this is the story you've told me, and, like my grandfather did with me. And so I encourage you, as you're kind of thinking about, we're moving into the holiday season and Thanksgiving in the U.S. and Christmas all around the world, as you're thinking about these seasons, what do you want your life to look like 5 years ago? What fear do you want to break in your life? What fear do you want to break in your life? And I encourage you to prayerfully go before the Lord and say, what steps do I need to take to get rid of this fear? How do I need to be intentional to step into what I want to step into? Well, that's all I have for you this week. I pray that you figure out how to get past something that maybe you need to move into a new season, and that God can give you some intentional steps of things that you can do, like I did, doing intentional things and making things different, and rewriting something in your own life, those fears, those anxieties, and ask the Lord to give you some steps to maybe be more intentional, to make them places of celebration. Well, you can find me at Real Life with Jenny on Instagram and on Facebook. You can also support this podcast by going to buymeacoffee.com, and you can go to reallifewithjenny.com. I know, reallifewithjenny.com, or you can go to christconnection.cc. All of my info is there. Love to meet with you if you have some questions. I'd love to pray with you as you're kind of walking through whatever you're walking through. And just know that God has got a plan for you. I know I say that every week, guys, but really, He does. He wants to be along the journey with you. He wants to help you be intentional and get rid of those fears and step into a new season, whether it's with you or with your kids or with your family or with your job. I just pray that this year would be a year of being intentional. You all have a great week.